Every fish, every octopus, every shark that you see in this aquarium are ambassadors for their species to teach people that the ocean's in real trouble, and without the ocean, we don't live. It's as simple as that. I've been at the aquarium for 3 years. It's been a very interesting road for me. I've taken multiple paths. I think this is about my 3rd career. So I started off in history, maritime history and museum and heritage studies. And then I did about 5 years in maritime archaeology, which is kind of diving on shipwrecks and researching the history of kind of the ocean and human interaction with the ocean. And then I found my way here, and it's been a really interesting journey for me because I wouldn't go into aquariums before I started this job, and then this job came up at the perfect time for me when I was kind of looking for something in a new direction. And since the moment I started here, I realized that my idea of aquariums was not quite right. It was very much, I thought it was a space for tourism and entertainment. And then I've realized with the Two Oceans Aquarium, where we've got so much conservation work, rehab, rehabilitation, education, I am now a huge supporter of aquariums. So it really has changed. And I, as my job as communications manager, it's really, really important that I believe in what we do and I believe in what I talk about. And I'm really lucky that I can.
For me, protecting the ocean is important to me because I grew up very close to the ocean. My dad is a recreational fisher. My mom loves rock pooling, so they'd introduced my brother and I to ocean spaces, to rock pools and small creatures. And I think from a young age, it was always instilled to care for other animals besides yourself. And so that was installed with me and to my brother and I at a young age. And I think from then it's just fostering that care, or that care for animals and love for animals has always just grown. But I think most importantly, as I've gotten older and as I've engaged with other people within the industry and industry experts, and then having studied and now become a marine biologist, it's so critical. The ocean is essentially our lifeline. 2 out of every 3 breaths come from the ocean. I think a lot of people think that our oxygen comes from trees, terrestrial trees, and that is also another misconception. Almost 70% of our oxygen comes from the ocean. So it comes from phytoplankton, so it's microscopic animals that photosynthesize, and they produce oxygen by absorbing CO2. And in a way, the ocean is like the silent climate hero. It's absorbing all of this carbon dioxide and giving us all of this life. And it allows us to eat. I mean, the ocean feeds us. It provides transport. It provides all these things. So why wouldn't we look after it? I think for me, I wouldn't, now as a mother, I wouldn't want to see my daughter disappointed or not having the ocean space as her space as well. I wouldn't want her to experience the ocean and then there's a loss of life, or there's a lack of biodiversity or biodiversity loss. So it's also about preserving the ocean space for generations to come.
So with African penguins being a critically endangered species, it's very important for us at the aquarium to send that message across to people. In the wild, there are not many of these birds left. There's about less than 10,000 breeding pairs, and unfortunately, they're only found along the southern African coastline. So what we do at the aquarium is share that information We've got a campaign called Not on Our Watch, and it's very, very cool to log onto that website, help us write letters to the minister, help us create awareness to other public members, help us tell that story of the African penguin, because if they are not around in the next 10 to 15 years, our future generation will never see something like that in the wild. And the only time you'll see a penguin is in a captive environment, is in a facility, is in a rehabilitation center, but that is not where they belong. So the penguins that we have here, or per se the African penguins, they are great ambassadors to their species to tell the story of what is happening. There aren't fish in the ocean. Pollution is a major concern for African penguins. Habitat destruction, climate change. Those are all the elements that is affecting the African penguin today, but has affected them in the past as well.
Hey, penguin!
Feel very passionate about creating avenues for inland people who live inland, and kids particularly, to have access to knowledge around the marine environment. There are so many barriers. I mean, I think one is just access to information, easy access to information. So, us taking our knowledge base and our education programs and getting them inland. And one way that is happening is that you can now take marine sciences as a school subject. And we have a lot of kids inland who are actually choosing to take that. And so that's just creating access in that way so that people can start thinking around it. So I think, and then obviously there are barriers to we have huge amounts of poverty. And so it's a privilege, I think, to be able to consider the environment at all. So not just marine environments, I think sort of the terrestrial environment is also, it's a privilege to be able to consider that in your everyday life, because the majority of our people are just surviving. Poverty is a huge barrier. So lack of education, or access to education, I think more, a barrier of poverty. And then there are also kids who just don't have that family network or community network. And I think that network creates access to all of those other two things. I think there are multiple barriers. It's incredibly difficult. And it's also a very expensive thing to get involved in. And there are loads of people that come from humble backgrounds, and they have that drive and they make it work, and that's absolutely incredible. But let's make it easier for people. Let's create a space where they can have access to these things, and that they know it exists. Because really our rivers lead, there's a very well-known saying that all rivers lead
To the ocean. So if you throw your chip packet in that river, it's going to end up in the ocean. A lot of people, for them, it's out of sight, out of mind. If I don't see it, it doesn't bother me. What happens to the ocean, it happens over there. It doesn't impact me. Not knowing that it directly impacts them. So people who live inland, Pretoria, Joburg, things happening to the ocean, it happens over there. It's Cape Town's problem, it's Durban's problem. And so we would take that for granted as like common knowledge, but it's not common knowledge. Also, how many people or which communities have access to that knowledge? Which communities are educated? Which communities are not? So when we think of like the ignorance, for example, we need to think of who does it benefit when we educate people? Who is it benefiting? How is it helping these people? So I think we always need to take our ego and just take a step back. Like I said, put people at the center of these. We've created these intricate problems, so we need to create these intricate solutions. And the only way we do that is by putting people at the center of it. I think for so long now, people have felt removed from the ocean for certain reasons. So it's time to work alongside people to bridge that gap and to come up with solutions with them.
There's a huge amount of a feeling of overwhelming fear of there's nothing we can do, it's just everything's terrible. And I think especially with young generations and children, I think it can feel very much like there's nothing I can do, and I'm feeling really sad about all of this. Inspiration, I think, is the key to getting over that overwhelming feeling. Every little bit counts. And I think it doesn't matter if it's you making a decision to say no to a straw with your drink, or if you're, I mean, there's a young woman who started something called Save a Fishy. They've created this very effective beach cleanup initiative that they do every weekend. It's an example of, she started with something small and it's grown into something massive, and she has a huge network of people and she has a huge support from her family. But I don't think you have to start a whole beach cleanup in order to make a difference. And I think just those small things and those small changes that you make in your everyday life can have a massive impact. And I think that's something that I find incredibly inspiring, is people making the choice every day to either tell somebody about something new or make a decision on what you do in your daily life. I think that's incredibly inspiring.